Alright, good morning class and welcome to my home kitchen. Today we are going to be attempting to make mini lemon meringue tarts. There's quite a few components. I'm hopefully going to stick one video together for you, but it'll have several little edits in it. So bear with me. You'll see that I have most of the ingredients prepared in front of me. I do have a few other odds and ends off to the side. We'll be getting to that shortly. I am going to start with the meringue, so it is going to be awfully noisy. If I'm smart, I will edit it out of the video. If I fail, it'll suck to be you guys. So it's going to be 1 egg white separated. Make sure you get rid of all of the yolk. If there's any yolk in there, it will not work. You're going to need quarter of a cup of caster sugar, not half. And what I would recommend, if you can, is have a tiny little bit of salt on hand, which I'll have to get from the table because it's not, yes it is, winning. Sweet. So it doesn't actually specify this in the recipe, but if you use a tiny little bit of salt in your egg whites, it actually helps them stabilize. So we're going to start with that first. It is going to suck as far as audio quality goes, but hopefully you'll see the gist of what's happening. Now I also have a short cord on my mixer, which I totally just bought from Kmart. So let's see how this one goes. Into a nice clean bowl, your egg white, keep your sugar on the side, same with your salt. Like I said, you'll be using that a little bit later on. You're just going to be using a pinch. Start by whisking your egg whites. You'll need to hold the bowl on a little bit of an angle. You guys won't be able to see what I'm doing, but you'll be able to hear it. It'll be heaps noisy. You'll love it. So we're almost at stiff peaks at this point. So what I'm going to do is sprinkle in a tiny little bit of salt, if I can get it to stay still for long enough, which may be a problem. I can do this, I believe in me. So I've probably got a little bit too much out, so literally just a pinch, and the excess I'll just get rid of in the bin. What a waste of perfectly good salt. So keep whisking it. Now you'll see that we're basically at stiff peaks. The actual egg white itself on the end will hold its shape. So what we're going to do now is basically keep mixing it and slowly incorporate the sugar, and then we're actually going to put it onto a tray and bake it off as the meringue tops. So once you're finished, it should look something like this. It's going to be quite stable. The peaks should be relatively stiff, and that's all you really need to do with that egg white mixture. So what we're going to do is then put it onto a baking tray. Which I prepared earlier. So it doesn't particularly matter what type of tray you've got, just as long as it's flat, put a piece of baking paper down. Ideally, you'll be setting preheating your oven to 110 degrees. But if you forgot, just preheat it for about 5-10 minutes before you actually put these in. You should be right. Basically, we're just going to cook them for about 15 to, no, 20 to half an hour, basically until they dry out. So all they are is just egg whites with sugar that's been dried out. They're delicious, you'll love them. If you have a piping bag, you can pipe them. If you have a freezer bag or a Ziploc bag, you can put the mixture into that, cut the corner off and actually pipe them like that. If you just want to do it the old-fashioned way, just use some spoons. Put them on any way you like. So they don't need to be anything fancy. They're just going to be on top of your little tarts. So as long as you make probably about 12 ideally, you'll be fine. So I'm not going to do the whole lot in front of you. I will do some off camera, which is the delightful part as far as I'm concerned, because you don't have to listen to me, but that's for you to interpret at your own leisure. So just using your spoons, try and keep them the same size and shape, but just do your best. They'll be a little bit stringy, but it's not a big deal. Once you've got them all in the tray, straight in the oven, they'll cook for 20 minutes to half an hour. That's the first little step for what we're doing today. Alright guys, so the next thing we're going to make is the biscuit base. You basically need to get your butter and icing sugar and cream it until it is light in colour. You can do this with a wooden spoon. It works better if the butter is soft and or at room temperature. Although what you can do if you like is once again go back to your fancy mixer and it'll make it a lot quicker and easier. However, it is a lot noisier. I'll be doing that today because I'm lazy. Once you've actually creamed it together, what you'll be doing is sifting in your 1 cup of flour, I believe. Yep. So you're meant to be using a plain flour. I'll be using a wholemeal because that's what I have in my house. So we'll see how that goes very momentarily. First, I'm going to cream the butter and sugar slowly, hopefully, and as quietly as I can. So that we can get started on this. You can see that the butter, it has been out on the bench for a while, but it is still quite hard. So before I actually turn on the machine, because otherwise it'll make a big poof of a mess, I'm just going to use the blades to try and squish it together, try to squish it into the sugar. You won't achieve a lot, but it will reduce the amount of puff sugar that happens. So I'll just turn it on slow. There is no slow, there's only high. Fantastic. This is where you get your money's worth, guys. So I'll squish it up a little bit more and hope for the best. Wish me luck. I really don't want to make a mess. I can't be bothered cleaning up. Too much work. So just keep squishing it together. You'll see that it's starting to come together, and there's only a little bit of mess on my bench so far. If you're happy with making a mess, you can do this much quicker, and if you have a full mixer with the bowl is attached to the unit, you can probably do this without causing a mess because those units are designed for this sort of task. I, however, do not. So my butter was still too cold. If I was smart, I would have sat it on top of my oven, but I didn't think about it before I started this today. So just keep trying to incorporate it together. You can see that it is definitely slowly starting to turn a light colour as the butter is taking up that sugar. So we'll see how we go. You'll see that that's pretty much come together. So what we're going to do now is slowly stir in the sifted flour, and I'll make sure I get all the butter off the blades of this unit as well. As you can see, my unit, being a highly expensive piece of equipment, didn't cope particularly well with cold butter. So I'll just quickly sift that in. And I'm going to stir it quite a lot before I turn on the machine, because otherwise I'm going to make a huge mess. And as already stated, I don't want to deal with that. So if you have a spatula on hand, which fortunately I do, you can use it to scrape the butter off the blades back into the mixture, and you'll be able to hopefully incorporate that into your flour before we turn the mixture back on. Doesn't need to be perfect, of course, because it is all just going to get mixed back together in a second, but the more we get off, the better. And we won't talk about the mess I made on my bench. So like I said, before I'm turning it back on, I'm literally just stirring it manually with the actual mixing unit, just to try and slowly incorporate some of it now, so I don't make a huge mess. Because that's what I'm all about when I'm working at home. I don't want to make a mess, I live here. You can see that it's starting to come together. Like I said, I'm using a wholemeal flour, so mine's going to be a lot browner or darker in colour than if you used a white flour. Basically just use what you've got, doesn't matter. So I'll try turning it on now and see how it copes. Probably going to burn out the motor. It's fine, it's $12, what can you do? So with a mixture like this one, once you get it to this stage, you can actually get your hands in there and it'll come together really quick, because now that it's all broken up and all clumpy, the heat from your hands should actually help basically pull it all together and make it all gooey and delicious really quickly. So just get your hands straight in there and you'll see really quickly how much effect just the heat from my hands is having on the dough. I'll just squidge it together with my hand and you can see that it almost instantly turned into a dough that we can use to make the base of the pastry. Like I said, you can do that manually by hand. If you have room temperature butter, that's no problem, but I did not. So this was a lazy way of doing that. Your dough, if you use a white flour, is going to be more of a yellow than the sort of goldy brown I have. And if you really want, you can actually use this lump that I'm now holding to clean up all the flour and butter on the bench. It is quite sticky, being that it's made of basically sugar and butter. You can use that to pick up all the crumbs and just incorporate it back into the dough. And we can basically push this to the side until we've made the curd. Depending on which order this video gets constructed. Alright guys, see you in a few minutes. Alright guys, we're almost there. We've got 2 more steps. We need to make the lemon curd and we need to basically roll out and assemble the tarts and put them in the oven. So I'm going to start with the filling now. So I'm going to turn on the stove. I'm going to create a double boiler in order to cook out the lemon curd. So what we'll be doing is getting a metal bowl, placing it over a pot or a saucepan, Ideally, you don't want them touching. It's not always the easiest thing to do, depending on what you've got available to you. So, what you'll be putting into there is going to be pretty much everything except your eggs. So it's going to be lemon juice, lemon zest, 60 grams of butter, and 1/3 of a cup of sugar. So what we're going to do is put that onto heat. I'm going to cook that until it all combines, and I'm going to put in the egg, and basically at that point we'll turn down the heat, keep stirring it until it actually forms up and sets into a curd. As soon as it starts to hold its shape, essentially, we take it off the heat, and then we put it down to cool as we prepare the filling, as we prepare the base or the dough. So with this, you guys probably don't have the best angle, but I don't have any other things to stick my tripod onto, so you'll have to go without for now. Basically, we're just going to combine the ingredients and melt them together, and then we'll slowly incorporate the mixed eggs. Now, in this recipe, we use 3 eggs. 2 are meant to go into this here, and 1 egg white is meant to go into the meringue, which is already in your oven, hopefully. Oh no, there's a lemon pip. So what I usually do with that 3rd egg yolk is actually combine it into this mixture as well, because otherwise it's just a waste. Try and make sure you actually get out all of the lemon pips, because it's not a pleasant thing to find in your curd. So we basically just need this to start heating up so the butter melts and combines with the sugar and the lemon juice. We did use 1 large lemon. We used a microplane to get all the zest off, or the skin. But remember, there's heaps of ways of doing that if you don't actually have a microplane at home. You can use the small side of a grater, where you can slice off the skin and chop it up with a knife, whatever is most accessible to you. If you have a zester, you can just use that. Whatever you got, do your best. I believe in you. You can do this. So you'll see that my mixture is starting to melt and combine. I've got it on a pretty high heat, because I do want this to go pretty quickly so I can get on with the rest of the recipe, and I can go about the rest of my day. Once again, you can see it's almost fully combined. It is hot, so make sure you've got a dry tea towel on hand. Now, if you're going to fold it over like I have, you need to make sure it's not going anywhere near the flames, because you will have a problem with that. If it is too hot, just turn it down. It's pretty straightforward. You don't want to burn yourself on something silly like lemon curd. So now that it's all melted, I'll keep stirring it for a few minutes. I want to make sure all the sugar is dissolved. There is actually some sugar around the top of the bowl, so I'm going to keep stirring that for a few minutes, and then I'm going to slowly incorporate my egg, and I'll probably turn it down just prior to that. So your actual egg mixture, it's going to be just the 2 eggs, and like I said, I stirred in that additional yolk. It just says lightly stirred up, so I just whisked mine with a fork. So once you add this, you can't actually walk away from it. You have to stay here and stir it, or it'll turn gross and weird, and you don't want that. This is a delicious, delicious, delicious product if you do it properly, so give it the TLC it deserves. So I'll turn it down a second. I'm just going to pour the egg straight in. You want to keep stirring. You don't want it to scramble the mixture. So all of that straight in. Just keep stirring. Stirry, stirry, stirry. Push that over to the side. I'll turn mine down slightly, and I'm just going to keep stirring it. Now, it will take a few minutes for it to start to coagulate. It's one of those big fancy words I make you guys learn. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. And if not, go back to your textbook and start again. You need to pay more attention. You're a jerk and I hate you. So like I said, this stage will take a few minutes, but you do need to constantly keep an eye on it. You'll notice it when it starts to thicken up, hopefully. So So you'll see on the side of the bowl where I haven't been stirring it as much, it's starting to set. That's what we're after. We want the whole thing to do that. I reckon mine's actually reached temperature. It's feeling pretty thick. Ooh, sizzly. So I might turn mine off and see what it's like. Yep. You'll see that in mine you can see some lumps starting to appear. And you'll see that it's actually quite thick now. So I'll probably just give this a quick whisk and I reckon it'll actually be done. That means I can just push it off to the side. If I had some on the back of the spoon, this is what it'll tell you to do in the textbook. If you make a line in the back of the spoon, you'll see that the mixture doesn't really run anywhere. So it's pretty much set. So if you look in the bowl now, it's pretty much a goo at this point, which is what we're after. I'm going to give that a quick whisk and then we'll go on to assembling the actual dough. Alright guys, we're up to the last part of the recipe. I can only show you so much because while I was making a few other odds and ends, my oven actually went out, so my meringue hasn't actually cooked. So I'll hopefully post some pictures of you of the finished product. But in the meantime, I'm just going to show you how to get them ready to go in the oven, and then you guys can figure the rest out, I'm sure. So once my dough has been sitting there, my curd is cooling down off to the side. So I'm just going to prepare the actual base and then fill it before I put it in the oven. It tells you to use a small muffin tray or something like that. Use what you've got, improvise. So I have just a muffin tray. It's pretty small, it only holds 6. It's also a bit larger than this product would ideally need to be. So I might only make 6, but I'll see how I'm going. So what I'll be doing is just dividing the dough up into basically 6 pieces. I'm not going to show you guys the whole thing, obviously. I'm just going to do 1 or 2, and then you guys can extrapolate and figure it out yourselves. So basically what you'll be doing is just rolling out the dough. Basically how big you'll make them will be based on the tray that you have. Once again, I'm working with this one here, which I hope is in focus. I make no promises. All you need to do is basically roll these up into any size or shape to fit the container they're going to go into, and then you basically mold them into that shape. I have lightly sprayed it, so what I'm doing at the moment is basically just making a hole. So I'll put them straight in, and then I'll basically just make a hole in the center to hold that curd. It is that easy. If you have a smaller tray, you make more, and it's actually quite nice, but because I only have this one here, this will do. So I'm only going to make the 6. As you can see, I'm just going to roll these out, and then I'll put a little bit of curd in, and then basically you put them in the oven, and then once they've set in the oven, which I think takes about 20 minutes from memory, basically what you do is cool them down, and then you put one of the pieces of meringue straight on top. And that's all it is. That's all you need to do to finish this recipe off. It's a nice, easy one. It's got a lot of complex components, but when it comes down to it, as long as you do each step properly and take the time to do each step, you won't have a problem getting a delicious finished product. And even if you do mess up something here or there, the product should turn out pretty delicious regardless. So once again, just putting the piece of dough in there and basically making a hole for the filling. You're gonna make a little nest, if you will. Even if you don't roll it out properly, you can just push it in and then just force it to how you want it. So you don't even need to spend that much time getting this part right. It just means that you might end up with thicker parts of the base. So I'll just grab out my curd and show you what it's going to look like with some curd in it, and then basically you just put them in the oven and top them at your own leisure. So like I said to you guys before, the curd's quite thick. Could probably be a tiny little bit thicker. I probably could have cooked mine a little bit longer. But you know, time is money, so they say. So once you've actually got these like that, it is so simple just to assemble these. Literally all you need to do is spoon the mixture in the middle. And if you have any excess, you can store it in a sterile jar, you can eat it, you can use it for something else, whatever you like. All right guys, that pretty much wraps up what I'm doing for you today. Hopefully this was helpful, hopefully this was informative, hope you enjoyed it. I hope you actually make the time to do this yourself, it's quite nice. Either way, it's up to you at this point. Do as you see fit. I'll post some pictures in the Google Classroom, the finished product. Enjoy.